Picture this. You're a nerd waiting for a D&D session on call with your friends. You got time to kill, so you decide to watch YouTube on Discord together. You go about watching stupid meme videos and generally having a good time until one of your friends announced that they found a Turkish video about Ultrakill's lore and that you have to watch it because it would be really funny. Even if you objected, you are now watching the video and oh god, this is so bad. Most of the lore is wrong, it's missing crucial information and it straight up lies about a very obvious thing in the game. So what's the best course of action to take after watching this video? Well, it should be quite obvious since you're watching this.
You just skipped me too? John Verman'dan type out.
Why are you screaming that one? Why was there an exclamation? Shut up!
No! Like, come on, what do you mean?
Why are you using default cursor?
That sentence makes me want to
That's not how you translate. Okay, that's too far.
8. katmanda ise daha şiddetli, daha öfkeli bir Gabriel'la tanışıyoruz.
I'm sorry, what?
Ve en önemlisi 8. katman fraud yani dolandırıcı mı?
He said en önemlisi.
No!
İlk kız küpesiyle aldım, onu başka bir erkek küpesiyle kombinledim, onu takıyorum.
But then you get to 8 and he says you fight game. What do you mean?
I love Adal. Alright, before we start, I don't know if this is needed or not, but do not harass Adal. Even though he spread misinformation on the interwebs, he is still a human at the end of the day. And he's getting that sweet cash, which is respectable. This video is purely for entertainment, our English project, and to spread correct information for the lore of a stupid little video game we like. Okay, that's enough pleasantries. Let's start off with... So Adal starts his video off with the whole AI spiel, and then goes on to kind of explain the V1 and V2 models, a bit of information on the final war, and how Ultrakill's universe is based off of 14th century epic, the Divine Comedy, specifically the Inferno. Other than that, he doesn't really mention anything about Hell or Prelude or what the final war really entails. But you can't really blame the guy for not mentioning everything we know now. Violence and P2 weren't even out yet, contrary to what he may have you believe. Let's start off with the Final War, since the production of these goobers mostly stem from it. The Final War is theorized by most to be an alternate escalation to World War I, since the dates match up pretty well, and it's stated that the Final War started off as trench warfare, just like World War I. The Final War diverges from World War I with the production of blood-fueled machines to get an upper hand in combat. One of the first successes they had was with the Guttermen. These guys are fueled by a voluntary life fuel source that is kept alive by minimal life support. Who wouldn't love to have fuel source of Gutterman as their job title? The Guttermen also have text in Russian on their shoulder plate, which further supports my Gutterman is heavy TF2 game theory. To beat the Guttermen, the gutter tanks were created. Probably by the German military, hence the Faust Panzer written on their forearm. With the creation of the gutter tanks began the era of the final war where machines fought machines, and so machine production became very important in order to get a winning edge in the war. Human soldiers became utterly useless, so they were sent home. You might think, that's great, they get to see their families and stuff, but since the machines required so many resources, most people were impoverished. The war wasn't over after all. Many other machines were designed during the war, such as sentries, drones, earth movers, and the V models. The earth movers brought the final phase of the final war. They had built-in shield generators which rendered outside attacks useless. But since their ginormous size, they needed solar energy alongside blood to run. People built towns on these big giraffes to not get crushed, and they eventually established a new peace. The new peace was mostly caused by something called the Long Night, which is basically global warming at its finest. The sun being blocked meant the earth movers couldn't function, which meant no more war, I guess. Any war machine that was being worked on was pretty much scrapped. They still made machines, don't get me wrong, but these ones were nice and did good things like cleaning. Anyway, after all that exposition, we can talk about you! The silly scrimbler you play as an Ultrakill is V1. They are very fast, very stylish, very blue, and very hungry. Remember how I said these machines were fueled by blood? Well, V1 doesn't need to have a live fuel source strapped onto it or have to sit down and fuel itself in its downtime. No, this GoPro can simply soak in the blood that it comes in contact with. Pretty useful on the battlefield. They also were kinda created to take down the Earth movers since they are agile and small and they can go lobotomize the big giraffe. But as we established, the war is over. We have peace now. We don't need V1 anymore. Let's throw them in the trash. Let's produce this V2 guy with stronger plating since they aren't gonna get fresh blood splattered on them now that peace is here. I don't know why they still insisted on robots being fueled by blood, but to each their own, I guess. One more thing before we finally start with Prelude is God just kinda ditching everyone. Like, leaving for the milk and never coming back. We don't know exactly when God leaves, but we know that he leaves a long time before the events of the game. We can find God's little secret diaries in the secret levels of the game. From one of these we can deduce God deems free will a flaw, humanity a failure, that he sorta can't control hell, and that he regrets casting Lucifer into hell, and that it was an act of fury. These are probably the leading causes of him leaving. Well, enough of that, let's finally get the prelude. Goodness, that took a long time. After the whole war fiasco, it lasted 2 centuries, my god, and people finally getting a break from all the bloodshed, they realized, wait, the sun is gone! We need a new source of energy or we're gonna die! So after a bit of searching, they found hell. Yep, it's that easy. So hell is connected to the earth in Ultrakill, pretty much like in the Divine Comedy, even though in the latter it's more abstract. Humans start building silly little factory-like things and setting up a mining facility, just trying to get as much of that hell energy TM as they can, and this kinda angers hell, I guess. Oh, wait, did I not mention hell is a living organism? Whoops, should have read the P-2 ARG document. Hell starts taking some machinery and fusing it with its own inhabitants, the sinners, and being an all-in-all nuisance. Humans eventually have to leave their hell bases since hell is locking them in rooms, trying to get them killed, and probably just consuming them if this line is to be believed in a literal sense. At the start of the game, there's a boot-up sequence which serves as a setting phase, and it ends with the phrase anyone who's even just heard of Ultrakill will know. Mankind is dead, blood is fuel, hell is full. The first and last lines are related in the person die, go to heaven or hell way, and I'd say most of the people who were making war machines would go to hell. Just a thought. Well, there isn't much going on in Prelude other than 0-S, which is very fun, and finally entering hell after fighting 2 Cerberi. Yes, Cerberus isn't a dog in this game. I feel scammed too. So let's move on to...
So limbo is when you're good, but you just, didn't like God enough. When you first go there, you get a green jump scare, and you're like, whoa, I thought this was hell. And, well, it is. It's just that you're tortured psychologically about how you were so close to getting into heaven, but never will. It may look nice at first, but it's all fake. Everything is an imposter among us. The bird sounds are fake, the trees are fake, you are fake, even the sky is fake. There are LED borders that scream to the touch. In the book you find, it's revealed that the people in Limbo aren't actually stuck here. So you may be thinking, well then, why don't they just leave? Are they stupid? Well, the only way they can go is deeper into hell, and I mean, why would you want to do that? In the book, you can also see the effects of the torture of Limbo, and that the author is asking for forgiveness from Gabriel. You can also find a skeleton praying to a stained glass window depicting Gabriel, so it's safe to assume that Gabriel ignored him, and that's just sad. This Gabriel guy kinda sucks. Also, there's an extra skull on this level that you can put on the skeleton, and his name's now Hank. Yippee! Alright, it's time to talk about the final boss of Limbo. So you remember how you play as Wii1 and there was a prototype Wii2 model? Well, guess what? They're here too! They're like you, but better and red instead of blue. And I know you guys play Brawl Stars, so you know what that means. Kill! Don't actually though, I like them a lot, please don't. Oh, thank god they escaped. I'm sure we'll never see them again. And that's it for Limbo!
Next time!
How much?
Secret.
Why?
Just guess.
$600?
Jail.
I don't care who the IRS sends, I am not paying taxes!
You know, for a video titled The Lore of Ultrakill, he sure skips a lot of lore. I mean, he only explains how lust was depicted in the Divine Comedy instead of the lore in the game, but that's why I'm here. Lust is where, well, lustful people go. The people who loved a little too much. However, as you go through the layer, you can notice that this place is like a city. They have electricity, travel systems, even stalkers. And I mean, this is clearly a city. So, for the second time you go, whoa, I thought this was hell. And well, it is. You see, King Minos, yes, like Greek mythology, is the judge of hell. In the Divine Comedy, Dante says that he was at the entrance of hell. And now you might argue that technically that would be Limbo. Lust is where things get real, okay, I can let this one slide. After God disappeared and all the angels were called back to heaven, King Minos took advantage of the chaos to rebuild civilization in the Lust layer, because he didn't believe that the souls in Lust deserved eternal punishment. Their only sin was loving each other after all. Or so he thought. Unfortunately for him, after the angels finally re-established order, they noticed how much fun they were having and said, "We can't have that." So they sent Gabriel to put an end to this. And with that I mean just straight up killing Minos. Later you'll realize that this is a bit of a pattern. Instead of fighting back, Minos tried to reason with Gabriel, but was immediately killed. You know, this Gabriel guy really doesn't sound very cool. I mean, at least listen to him, right? He really likes ignoring people. I think Minos agrees with me on this one. If you go to fight his literal soul, fueled by pure determination, it's complicated, he goes all,
"Oh, Gabriel, now dawns thy reckoning,"
and stuff, which is Old English for "you so dead, bro." Anyway, his soul was imprisoned in his corpse, which got infested by parasites, and he was forced to watch as his corpse destroyed what he and the people of Lust had worked so hard to build. Yikes, that's rough, buddy.
Machine, turn back now.
hi, it's me again. So you might think,
oh my god, we're inside a person.
but don't worry, you're wrong. Hell does get a bit quirky at night, so we're in Gluttony right now. So hell isn't very, how can I explain this, tangible. So there is no clear way through to the next layer/level. It simply uses naturally generating drops as ways to link itself to the other layers. Look, it's complicated. I feel like this is just Hakita's get out of jail free card, so let's just move on. In his video, Adal says that sinners here get chomped on by a giant three-headed dog, which is very Dante's Divine Comedy of him because this is not happening in Ultrakill. This room probably alludes to it, there are 3 Cerberus, but we never see a pupper eat people. You also access the Prime Sanctum that our buddy chump Hal Minos is trapped in here in Gluttony. Keep in mind you have to complete every level in Act 1 in a timely manner, kill all enemies in a level, and do it stylishly. It's a fun challenge and you get to get better at the game while P-ranking these levels, and oh boy will you need to be good at the game for what's inside of the Prime Sanctum. Moving on to the next level in Gluttony, which is also the last one, players at the end of Acts only get 2 levels since they're very epic and climactic. So we're gonna be fighting the boss now. And here's what you've been waiting for! He is annoying, he is a huge jerk, he is my beloved, it's Gabriel Ultrakill! I hate him very much. You might have seen him in our other projects, since I hate him so much I just had to put him in them. Adal translated his dialogue, and if I were to criticize it, we'd be here all day discussing semantics, and I don't want to do that. Anyway, after his whole monologue about how he's better than you and how you suck and you just leave because he's the righteous hand of the Father and that he does not have daddy issues, you get to fight the guy. You might have noticed that he's called the Judge of Hell and are wondering, why is he called that? I thought he was a messenger angel like Jebediah from Islam. Well, remember how he killed Minos? You should, it hasn't even been a minute yet. Well, after that he was appointed the Judge of Hell by the Council to fill in the gap that Minos left. He acts like he is above you and he views you only as an object. He doesn't even deem you worthy enough for him to use his physical sword, so he attacks you with weapons made of pure light. After he gets hit a bit too much, he gets plus enraged, which means he turns into Iron Man. He has a plethora of taunts, which is explained in-game by him having a massive ego, and wouldn't you know, the coin-throwing Nikon wins this little duel. Of course this is a hard blow on little Gaby's ego, and he leaves, vowing that this is not over, and wishing that your woes are many and your days few. He also insults you by calling you an insignificant How mean. So, Adal just completely skipped the Act 1 intermission, but you know, that's fine. No, that's fine! There's absolutely nothing important in this lore bit! Not in the slightest! If you couldn't tell, I'm /Jing right now. This intermission is actually very important for understanding why Gabriel is so angry and desperate and... Oh wait, that's spoilers. You'll get there eventually, don't worry. Before we start, let's talk about what exactly happened after God's disappearance. After God left all his silly little angels, heaven devolved into pure chaos. All angels who had jobs in hell were pulled back to heaven to search for their creator, which they failed at. After a while, a new authority was established called the Holy Council, or any of these other names. They were a council of angels that said they acted on what God wanted. So, in the Act 1 intermission, we see little Gabe boy crouched in the middle of shadowy cloaked figures. These are the counselors. You'll see them better in the future. They berate Gabriel for losing to
a mere object!
And if you look at how they refer to him, yeah, they don't particularly see him as his own person. They decide that there is no way Gabriel Ultrakill from hit indie game Ultrakill could have possibly lost to him.
A mere object!
And he must have lost on purpose, perhaps forfeit. Even if Gabe objects to this, they say their classic line, impossible, heresy, unspeakable, heresy, heresy, and rip the Father's light from Gabriel's body. The Father's light is basically a life source for angels, as explained in the cutscene with the fact that Gabriel will ultra-die in 24 hours. It also seems incredibly painful since it's said that Gabe was screaming, said screaming getting drowned out by the hiss of gospel and praise of God. That must be traumatizing. Sounds very cultish as well. From this experience, Gabe's hatred towards the security camera only grows larger, since it's not just his ego that's on the line anymore. And that's why Act 2 is called Imperfect Hatred.
So you're telling me that this guy just skipped over the entire Act 1 cutscene and completely ignored Minos and Sisyphus lore as if they weren't important? For shame. I cannot believe he has the audacity to call this the unknown story of Ultrakill, but he only talks about the parts of the lore that literally anyone can understand by simply playing the game. I mean, just look at this. He just says their names and moves on. In Greed, you encounter enemies called the Sisyphean insurrectionists. Insurrection means rebellion, you know, like the French in 1789. In their terminal entry, we're told that King Sisyphus, yes, like Greek mythology, had taken advantage of the chaos that ensued when God disappeared, to overthrow heaven and end their eternal suffering. This is very similar to what Minos did, however, they took very different approaches. While King Minos was gentle and noble, King Sisyphus would lie, cheat, and kill without a doubt if that is what needed to be done. He pushed a dumb rock up a hill for a bajillion years, and had a philosopher write a whole book about him or something, I don't know. Anyway, unfortunately for him, after the angels finally re-established order, they noticed how much fun they were having and said, "We can't have that," so they sent Gabriel to put an end to this. And with that I mean just straight up killing Sisyphus. Once the angels returned to hell, Gabriel realized that the insurrectionists were too dependent on Sisyphus's guidance, and killing him would bring chaos upon the army, which, if you notice, is exactly what happened to the angels when God disappeared. And they tried to tell you evolution isn't real. The insurrection failed, but Sisyphus was like, "You fools! I didn't care about succeeding anyway! I just wanted to rebel!" Well, now that this weirdo's out of the way, we need to move on to the final level of this layer, because V2 is back! After their first defeat, they analyzed the battle for hours like a tryhard, and can now use your own attacks against you if you aren't fast enough. Isn't that fun? And they got a new arm, because if you'll remember, they quite generously gifted their old one to V1, and just like the first battle, they escape. Can't wait to see them again in violence. Did they just...
I only say morning, cause if it were a good morning, I'd be fishing. Welcome to SeaWorld, Florida. Wrath is the designated water level of Ultrakill. And hey look, that new arm you borrowed has no debuffs in water. Anyway, time for lore. The Wrath layer is where the river Styx is. Yes, like Greek mythology. And there is even a ferry that transports souls to the end of the layer for them to go to Ultra Hell. How nice! In the Divine Comedy, Dante passes out on the ferry. What a loser. After the extinction of humanity, something we don't know the exact cause of, the river Styx was turned into an ocean, since the punishment of these sinners is being stuck in the river. Most sinners thrash and writhe to have a chance at escape, while some give up and sink. These sinners are called the Sullen, and their motionless bodies have fused to form the Leviathan. Their souls tried to escape through the heart at the top of the Leviathan's head, but were pinned back to the Leviathan by Gabriel's stupid little toothpicks. Let's get back to the ferry and subsequently the ferryman. Ferrymen are sinners who are so obsessed with going to heaven that they get a pass by heaven and get a good boy rank. They even get a holy cloth that imbues their body with a radiant energy that firstly colors their bones a silly color, and secondly lets their skulls open doors unable to be opened by other sinners. Well, how do they get the skulls? Homicide! The new ferryman takes the old ferryman's skull after beating them in a duel to the death. They also don't have skin because they tear it off since they despise their human form, which is not the angel form they desire. The current ferryman is quite the, how do you say it, simp. Written in their fanfiction/diary is their heart-wrenching backstory. They were in their boat and then, oh no, so many waves, oh no, what will they do? Oh god, they fell in, what will happen now? They see the light, no wait, it's not the light, it's Gabriel Ultrakill! He reassures the ferryman that their devotion to God shows goodness in them, and that their heart is willing but the body must rest. The relevant diary entry ends with the phrase, "Radiant is Gabriel, for he is the light in my darkness." Like the song. This explains the amount of Gabriel iconography in Wrath, whether it be statues or paintings. These are the... Excuse me for a second. Whether it be statues or paintings. Yeah, no, this is not my drawing. It's actually in the game. Ferrymen have a background of carving statues, so we can take an educated guess and say these were made by the ferryman. Gabriel actually acknowledging their efforts of being as obedient as possible is also not helping the situation. But it shows that Gabriel can be a good person, I guess. We can also find our second individual of the Hank lineage in the ferryman's now huge cruise ship. That's about it for Wrath. Let's finally get to one of the most important layers in the game.
6. katman Heresy yani sapkınlık. Cehennemin bu bölümünde sapkınlar sonsuza dek yanmaları için ateşle dolu mezar taşlarında bulunuyorlar. Bu katmanı da geçiyoruz.
Did I hear that right? He said we're skipping this layer, right? You know what? I'm done. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Cheers. Sayonara. Adios. Ciao. Whatever.
Ah yes, violence. The layer that was released almost a year after Adal's video. Don't worry about heresy, we'll be getting there shortly. In his video he simply talks about what happens in Dante's Inferno and claims that that's what's happening in Ultrakill, even though he had no access to the layer when he was writing the script. Forget it. Violence starts off by flashbanging you and then goes on to become a labyrinth. Thanks Hakita. This level in particular is inspired by Mark Z. Danilevsky's House of Leaves, which is a book I'd love to read, but is too expensive. Here we see these lesser demons. I know, that's a big term, don't be scared, I'm not gonna elaborate on it. The community likes to call them Jonifers, and they have lore that rivals the FNAF animatronics. According to their terminal data, they were sinners that tried to escape when the angels left, but were soon exhausted and died. Which brings us to the topic of... what happens after sinners die in hell? Well, death is quite the luxury in hell, since you get to leave your punishment and get to a state of peace. We can't be having that. The angels love torment. So sinners that had died got stuffed into these guys and were forced to inflict the same punishment onto others of their situation. They can think for themselves, but can't act for themselves. How neat. You find this book written by a seeming inhabitant of the layer, and it talks about the Tree of Life and how to splay its fruit for all to see. The Tree of Life can be seen portrayed on these crosses as a circulatory system. Therefore the fruit would be, you guessed it, blood ketchup! The last lines of the book are, "The world is your canvas. So take up your brush and paint the world red." Very inspirational. As an artist, I too think agony and despair are the essence of art. Moving further, we found a drop that leads to a darker area. Here we see my true nemesis, the Minotaur. This was my honest reaction to seeing it for the first time.
Roadkill?
Minotaur!
Really?
No, leave me alone! No, it's him! It's him! The bane of my existence! Its terminal data appears crossed out, but you can still read it. It says that this horrifying beast was actually meant as a gift to the then at the time Judge of Hell, Minos, by probably another Greek king. Minos reacted to this gesture of report in the only sensible way, which is casting it into the labyrinth within the violence layer. I mean, can you blame the guy? You wouldn't want to see that in your house at 3 AM. It also reminded him of his past regrets and mistakes. Poor fella. Anyway, you kill the beast and move on through the layer. You find an active war zone, which we don't have to talk about since we talked about most, if not everything here in the pre-game section, and moving along we get to a forest. In the Divine Comedy it's explained that these trees aren't real trees and actually sinners that have committed quitting the game. I don't know RTÜK's policy on this, but we talk about it in philosophy lesson, so it should be fine. Here we see V1 has a built-in flashlight. Why they haven't used it in any other dark levels in the game beats me. Hey, what's up? It's me, editing me here to tell you the reason. Yeah, in a recent dev commentary stream, Hakita revealed why V1 doesn't use the flashlight in other levels. It's because there are other light sources in those levels, and they want to conserve the energy. So that's why. Thanks, Hakita, I guess.
Swiggity swoody, your blood is now my property.
And we go about feeding trees, as you do. These trees probably symbolize the tree of life, what with the feeding it with blood, the heartbeat you can hear when you are near them, and trees branching out like the circulatory system. After that we have our climactic battle with Benjamin and say goodbye to the violence layer, and oop, fraud and treachery are still in development. I guess we have to wait a long time before we can fight my little meow meow again. Woe's me.
Ah yes, of course, the most important layer, fraud, that is definitely out and you can totally play it. Yep, trust me bro, why would I lie to you? In Heresy, I mean fraud, you meet Gabriel again and just like last time he has things to say. From his first few lines we can understand that other machines are entering Hell too, and they're killing all the remaining husks and demons, and Hell itself I think? I don't know. Afterwards, he goes on a long monologue about how he's gonna slowly kill you and he will enjoy it. Now, if you were watching Adal's video, you would be thinking, geez, I mean I get that I totally beat his last time, but isn't he overreacting? Because you wouldn't know about the Act 1 cutscene where the council takes his holy light away, which means he'll die in 24 hours unless he kills V1 and the entire council regards him as a disgrace. Wow, can you believe it? Not explaining an important plot point makes people confused, no way! Anyway, after you beat him up a second time, he's like, whoa, my whole life just changed, be right back, and leaves. Also, he chuckles before saying in your day's free because he won't even live for another day, and it's very ironic, and I just thought that was a nice detail. Alright, I know you guys are all so bored and are dying to play games and watch TikToks and whatever you guys do all day. And well, I have good news, because we're almost done. After I finish reading all this, that is. Silence. Introspection. How many had he killed? Had he ever thought to count? How much cruelty did he embody? And to what end? Yeah, okay, this is going to take too long. I don't think I want to read all this anymore. Basically, he realizes that even though the council claimed that they were the will of God, this is probably not what God wants. So he decides to do what he wants for once, instead of obeying the council without question. And with that I mean committing genocide. Yeah, that's right. He finally stopped being so dumb and straight up murdered the entire council. Which, if you'll remember from the Act 1 ending, is a lot of angels. The last counselor tries to pull the gaslight gatekeep girl boss card again, but then Gabe says nuh-uh, so he pulls the you'll die if you kill me card, and then Gabe says
I know.
and Ultra kills him. So, one thing about this image. Remember how King Sisyphus started a rebellion against heaven and Gabriel killed him to end it easily? Well, if you look at the terminal entry of Sisyphus Prime, it says, Gabriel unsheathed his swords for the first time since time immemorial and beheaded Sisyphus, displaying his head for all to see. So, he's an experienced head beheader and displayer. Also, in this image, his wings and halo are colored in a different way than normal if you've noticed, like in the second phase of his second fight. In the game's code, this is labeled as T-Wings Ecstasy, which means extreme happiness. So basically, he really enjoys committing genocide. Aw, look at him. What a silly goober.
So, what are my final thoughts? Go play Ultrakill. As someone who has over 200 hours in this game that isn't even out yet, I can attest to it being very fun. If you like games where you go fast or games where you do cool tricks and get rewarded for said tricks, this will be right up your alley. Of course, with the new Steam price change, it may be a bit expensive, but if you have enough to spend and would like to spend it on a game for some reason, I couldn't recommend it enough. Hey, even if you don't like the fast-paced movement shooter archetype, the world, atmosphere, art direction, game design and characters of the game are very fun, and if you don't want to play the game, I'd suggest watching some videos on it or something. Go watch the devlogs, go watch Putter's stupid videos on adding his cat into the game, go watch Gianni's Gabriel Plays Ultrakill stream. The music of the game is immaculate, composed mostly by Hakita himself, and I would recommend listening to the soundtrack of the game. I thought I didn't like metal, but I guess I was wrong. Heck, even if you're sure you don't like metal, there are still tracks in the game that aren't metal, so go check them out. I'm pretty sure my co-host will be delving deeper into the music in her part, but I couldn't help but mention it. No game is good without a soundtrack. And lastly, Adal. I don't believe he actually wrote the script himself. I'd say some chat GPT-ing shenanigans were concocted for this script to be written. GPT does not know about information past January 2022, so he must have fed it some weird text for it to come up with a script like that. Anyway, after the Adal video, watching Turkish Ultrakill videos sort of became a hobby of ours, and this one by Coffee Lenny actually made us laugh, and not in a pitiful way, out of pure fun factor. Isn't that crazy? So go watch his video if you want to watch an Ultrakill video in Turkish. If you say, oh, I trust I'm good enough at English to watch English videos, go watch Shadow Enix or Mr. WildCard. They do a much better job at explaining the lore of Ultrakill than us stupid little guys. Also, credit to all of these guys for doing silly little puzzles to find Ultrakill lore. I appreciate it. Anyway, inform me when the V1 plush is restocked. Do not question why I draw Gabriel so much, and do not compare me to the ferryman. That's it from me.
Wow, what a nerd am I, right guys? Anyway, here's a list of the coolest, epicest songs from the OST in my humble opinion. Go check them out if you like metal and breakcore and the like. She said all there is to be said, so credit to the Ultrakill wiki for all the terminal entries and the funny little comments they have on there. Very useful. And credit to you if you haven't died of boredom yet. Thanks for watching, we'll shut up now.
Whoa. That really was Adal, right, you?